The idea that no person is above the law is a bedrock principle of American justice, and it's being tested like never before now that Donald Trump is the first former president in American history to face criminal charges from the federal government.
On Thursday, June 8th, two massive political stories broke, but only one of them got covered by the broadcast networks. On June 8th, former President Donald Trump was indicted by the special counsel in the classified documents case. That very same day, it was reported that President Joe Biden had allegedly received $5 million from an executive of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, the same company in which his son Hunter was involved. Guess which one was exhaustively covered and which one was completely covered up by the networks?
I see this as we are showing one of the fundamental tenets of a democracy, that the law applies to everyone equally. No one is above the law, not even a former president of the United States.
Anyone else who did these things would be prosecuted for them. We must ensure that no one is above the law.
Your work is vitally important to this committee and the American people because no one is above the law.
In America, nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
This is the United States of America. No one is above the law. No one.
No one is above the law.
Because no one is above the law.
Because no one is above the law, and he shall be held accountable.
The indictments of Trump prove that at least at this point in the process, no one is above the law.
No person is above the law in this country. Nothing stops us.
Even a former president.
I don't know how to, maybe I'll say that again. No person is above the law in this country. I can't say it any more clearly than that.
Nobody is above the law in the United States of America, especially the President of the United States.
Oversight Chairman James Comer believes new bank records will show the Bidens accepted as much as $30 million from foreign nationals.
We spent so much time in the last 4 years talking about high crimes and misdemeanors, trying to shoehorn things into high crimes and misdemeanors to go after Donald Trump. You know what you don't have to shoehorn into? Bribery and treason.
Right.
And there's evidence of both of those things from Joe Biden.
We're supporting a country. We want to make sure that country is honest. It's very important to talk about corruption.
So you would agree with me that if the Ukraine announced a corruption investigation of former Vice President Joe Biden, that would hurt his credibility as a candidate. Would you agree with that basic principle, sir?
Well, nobody...
Yes or no, sir? Would you agree with that principle?
Well, I slightly disagree with the predicate, with the premise of your question, because
Chairman,
you're talking about
I
Hunter
object to
Biden.
the question that requests opinion evidence. The gentleman is not recognized. The gentleman has the floor. Well, I object to the question. The gentleman rule on whether the question's in order or not. The question is in order. The question is in order. The gentleman will continue. Why? The gentleman will continue. It's his time.
Because you look at what Biden did what they would like to have me do, except for one problem. I didn't do it. What Biden did is a disgrace. What his son did is a disgrace. The son took money from Ukraine. The son took money from China, a lot of money from China. China would love to see, they could think of nothing they'd rather see than Biden get in, because they will take this great deal that we're about to make, and they would really have themselves a deal for themselves. So let me just tell you, what Biden did was wrong.
Vice President Biden, as Ukraine point man under Obama, bribed the Ukrainian government with $1 billion U.S. tax dollars. Biden's bribe was designed for one thing: to stop the investigation into his son Hunter and Burisma Oil, the Ukrainian company paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month to simply sit on its board. But rather than acknowledging any of this, the media played cover-up for Biden, stating it was all conspiracy theories and Russian propaganda. Shokin, they said, was a corrupt prosecutor general and had to go.
No other explanation for why Joe Biden, a vice president in Washington, would suddenly want some local prosecutor fired. He claimed European...
What did he care?
He claimed the European Union was behind it. They wouldn't know anything about this little case.
Joe Biden and his son are corrupt.
For fact's sake, despite President Trump and Rudy Giuliani's repeated allegations against the Bidens, no evidence of wrongdoing tied to his son Hunter Biden's Ukraine business has actually been found.
You understand what quid pro quo is, correct?
I do.
You understand what asking for something in exchange for something actually means, correct?
I do.
You know about the conversation of Mr. Biden when he asked and he said, I'm not going to give you the $1 billion. You know about that conversation, correct? You want me to read it to you, or do you know it?
One second. Are you talking about in 2015?
No, I'm talking about the one from the national, where you did the, I'll read it to you since you're having trouble. I said, nah, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have authority. You have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. Laughter. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm getting ready to be leaving here. And I think about 6 hours, I looked at them and said, I'm leaving here in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch, he got fired.
Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Did he or did he not? Either Joe Biden's a liar, telling a story to make people impressed, or he actually did this. Which is it?
He did it pursuant to U.S. official policy.
So he did it in withholding actual dollars, actual thing, holding this out there. So Joe Biden, of everybody that we discussed about, is the only one that's done a quid pro quo. He's the only one that's used taxpayer dollars to actually threaten a foreign government. And yet we're sitting here pretending that this is not happening? We're sitting here pretending that a president of the United States now would not be concerned?
Now, Shokin was fired. President Trump claims Vice President Biden's ultimatum there is the real crime here, but there's no evidence of that. In fact, PolitiFact and the Washington Post both investigated this claim, and they found no wrongdoing on the part of Vice President Biden. He was acting on behalf of the U.S. government and our allies, including Europe, who wanted the same outcome.
The awkward coincidence in taking issue with Viktor Shokin at this time was the fact that Viktor Shokin's office happened to be investigating Burisma oil.
The global community wanted that prosecutor in Ukraine fired because he wasn't going after corruption. And he wasn't investigating Burisma, by the way.
2 months later, on February 2nd, 2016, Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin's office seized Burisma founder Nikolai Zlochevsky's property and assets.
That's the month in which Shokin, who supposedly wasn't investigating anybody, that's another Biden lie.
And he wasn't investigating Burisma, by the way.
That's another Biden lie. Raided Burisma and put them under arrest. The owner of Burisma, who was crooked as all get out, Zlochevsky, was afraid his business was going to be taken away, and he brought Biden in for what he had bribed Biden to do, which was to fix the case for him.
Let's revisit our interview with Shokin back in Kyiv. I asked Shokin why he resigned, and he affirmed what he had sworn in a 12-page affidavit. He was pressured to resign because his office started seizing Burisma assets and in the process began to unveil Hunter Biden's involvement in illegal money laundering. My conversation with Poroshenko on this, Shokin says, was in a phone call. It was after we started seizing Burisma assets in Ukraine when Poroshenko called me and said, listen, this all has to stop already. Joe Biden's temper is overflowing. This seizing of Burisma assets, said Poroshenko, was the last straw. Shokin says Poroshenko then paid him a visit in his office, asking for Shokin's resignation. Shokin responded and asked, why do I have to go? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm doing my job. This is standard procedure. We have reason to freeze Burisma assets. And Poroshenko said, Biden is angry about you freezing Burisma assets. I'll figure something out. Now, the media and the Biden campaign slammed this account when it was first broadcasted, accusing Shokin of lying and arguing ad nauseum that Biden had Shokin removed because he was a corrupt prosecutor. The following conversation, dated February 18, 2015, appears to show Poroshenko admitting Shokin did nothing wrong, but was forced to resign anyways, at Biden's request.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your call is reconvened. Petro, can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's better. Oh, I have a second positive news for you. Yesterday, I met with the General Prosecutor Shokin.
Yes.
And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign. And 1 hour ago, he bring me the written statement of his resignation.
Great.
And this is my second step for keeping my promises.
And if you listen to the transcript, the guy basically says, we have no gripe against this prosecutor, no evidence. We did what you wanted. He said, I kept part of my promise here. So he's saying Joe Biden told him to do it.
In front of the Council on Foreign Relations, Joe Biden is dumb enough to brag about this, okay? In front of the Council, the biggest gossips, arguably, between New York and Washington, D.C.
What was the most astonishing about these recordings is the direct evidence of treason and government betrayal.
And he gets right up there and said, oh, look at me, I got rid of this guy. And like guys are scratching their head. Who was the head prosecutor of the Ukraine, which at that time was a relatively unimportant country. Really? I mean, come on.
Completely.
At that time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just idiotic. It's like Tony Soprano saying, hey, I just had a guy killed. Who would do that? Who would admit this in public?
It is.
Oh, rim shot. One of the arguments that the Bidens make is that, oh, but that prosecutor was corrupt. Maybe he was, but that doesn't mean that what you did wasn't bribery.
Poroshenko makes it clear to him that Shokin was not corrupt, because that was a cover story they were using in order to justify getting rid of him.
Said, we don't even know if the tapes exist now. So last week, the tapes were real and they had all the evidence, and now Republicans are telling us, like, we don't even know if the tapes exist. They made it up. They're making this shit up as they go, folks.
Now, you can remember last year when this first came out, all the Biden sycophants talked about how corrupt Shokin is.
John Kerry, Joe Biden, President Poroshenko, all on record discussing the delicate business of firing the highest law enforcement official in Ukraine in exchange for $1 billion U.S. tax dollars.
As I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Assuming that there is a new government and a new prosecutor general, I am prepared to do a public signing of the commitment for the $1 billion. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's what you want or don't want. I'm just suggesting that that's what we're prepared to do. And again, it wouldn't be finalized until, you know, the IMF pieces are written.
Extremely strong motivation. One of the possible candidates was leader of my faction, Lutsenko, who is the public figure. If you think that the political motivated figure would be not very good from your point of view, I recall this proposal. I do not propose, because nobody knows that I want to propose Lutsenko.
Biden goes on to say he will consider this option and get back with Poroshenko on the matter. Take a step back for a moment. The conversation you just heard would be parallel to Prince Charles calling President Trump and telling him to remove Attorney General William Barr and provide him with replacement options, of which his team would consider for the United States. An assault on sovereignty by every definition.
Federal law says if you are a public official, that includes the Vice President of the United States, and you are making decisions that are going to materially benefit members of your family, that's a violation of federal law. And even though the initial claims were that this individual was not investigating Hunter Biden, we know that he was.
Here's a document showing how many investigations there were regarding Mr. Zlochevsky and Burisma.
And he wasn't investigating Burisma, by the way.
Biden was especially happy about Lutsenko's appointment. Lutsenko did not have any legal experience, yet was appointed to lead the highest legal office in Ukraine. Biden seems eager to immediately direct Lutsenko's next moves.
Congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee.
If it seems Joe Biden's abuse of power as vice president and point man in Ukraine does not seem to receive much media fanfare, you're right. Peter Schweitzer says one reason the Bidens keep evading scrutiny is media's systematic cover-up of all Biden's sins, especially in Ukraine.
Why did the Ukraine FBI informant file refer to you as the Biden? Why is that term applied?
Why did I ask such a dumb question?
I think the general problem is more with the editors. And what's stunning in the case of Hunter Biden as it relates to Ukraine is the complete and total lack of any curiosity about these deals. I mean,
here with reaction, House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik. Good morning to you.
Good morning,
Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
Well, it's so good to have you here. What do you make of his reaction to that? Because it sounds like he's getting a little testy.
He is getting testy. Joe Biden wants this story to go away, but it is not going to go away. We're going to continue doing our work as House Republicans to bring transparency and ultimately accountability. This is the biggest political corruption scandal, not only in my lifetime, but I would say the past 100 years. You have multiple members of the Biden family profiting illegally from foreign governments. You also have the bombshell reporting, including potential tapes that exist of while Joe Biden was vice president taking a bribe from Burisma. So this reeks of corruption, and we are going to make sure that we follow the facts. And I want to say that Jamie Comer, who is our chair of Oversight and Government Reform, he's been doing a tremendous job following the facts, following the bank accounts, so that there can be transparency for the American people.
Yeah, James Comer says that there are new bank records, and he believes they're going to show the Bidens accepted up to $30 million from foreign nationals. Is he following the money? Will we get answers?
He is following the money, Ainsley, and this is a tree of corruption. It's multiple Biden family members, and the American people know that the big guy is Joe Biden. Mainstream media is doing everything they can to try to brush this under the rug to protect Joe Biden, who is the weakest incumbent president, who, of course, is running for re-election.
You look at the numbers of minutes that they have spent, ABC, NBC, and CBS, between June 8th and 12th on this Burisma story, 0, Elise, and 291 minutes on Trump's indictment.
It's absolutely outrageous, but the American people are smart. I always say this. I'm on the ballot every 2 years. I believe voters are smart, and they see through the bias in the mainstream media. They understand that the media is trying to cover up for Joe Biden, but we need to have good reporters continue to ask these important questions for the American people to know the facts. And as I said, tens of millions of dollars. These are illegal bribes and illegal corruption, and yet you have this White House trying to do everything they can to protect the big guy, Joe Biden.
So how was Derkach's explosive press release about Biden bribes received in Ukraine? Andrei Derkach told One America News President Zelensky called for an investigation, agreeing that Poroshenko partook in at least high treason. But Zelensky later walked back his statement, feeling such an investigation would harm Joe Biden so badly, Zelensky pulled back for fear his government would be accused of interfering with the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. But Derkach argues this is a Ukrainian matter. Joe Biden was the one who interfered, and a joint investigation commission should investigate. Ukraine is an independent country and cannot be governed by external forces, especially for the sake of selfish personal interests. Just 2 days after Derkach's press conference sharing Biden's bribe tapes, a Ukrainian court formally listed Viktor Shokin the victim of a crime committed by Vice President Joe Biden to illegally remove Shokin from office using a monetary bribe.
And he wasn't investigating Burisma, by the way.